1874, full time.
Hello, welcome to 1874 Full Time. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell to talk about Aston Villa 6, Brighton and Hove Albion 1, the score we all predicted before the game took place. Just a brief note that I'm ill and hungover, so I've got Jacob in basically to carry me because I feel like he may be a bit more coherent from yesterday's game. Jacob, how are you?
Doing really well, thank you. Yeah, I'm better than you. I
Yeah.
think I had a quieter Saturday night just writing about the win. But yeah, really good. I think always on a Sunday after a result like that, you just have a bit more of a spring in the step, don't you?
No, not me.
Yeah, maybe not
today.
you.
Not today. I read your piece about an hour ago because I haven't been able to even look at my phone barely through the day. I felt so bad. Really enjoyable read. Like you explain things so well. As I say, you'll be able to definitely do it more coherently than me. But what was it yesterday that Villa did? I've read your piece. As I said, I don't want you to completely give away your piece because obviously you want people to read it. But to me, it felt a little bit like Villa for kind of 10, 15 minutes let Brighton have the ball, kind of lulled them into a little bit of a false sense of security, and then just went bang, right, we're coming for you. Now you've explained it much better than that in your piece, but am I along the right lines?
Yeah, you are. I think there was a moment early on where Pau Torres got the ball and he was twisting and turning. I think Evan Ferguson was trying to press him and he didn't have any options available. And then I think the ball went out of play and I think Luiz Dunk kicked out in the end and Pau Torres just looked up. He wasn't sure what happened. But it all came back down to Brighton's man marking systems. And that was inside the first 10 minutes and Villa was still trying to get to grips with it. But Emery said something really interesting in his Friday press conference. Whenever he gets asked about the opposition manager, he says, tough, going to be a tough game, good manager. But he went into detail on Diaby, quite good tactical detail. He said he watched them a lot, he wants to learn from them. But he says their best strength was breaking the press. And I noted that. I saw the transcript and I thought, right, let's see what he does the 24 hours later. And after that Pau Torres incident where he couldn't play out from the back, Villa completely transformed in a way. They went more direct. Emi Martinez was taking free kicks, goal kicks, went direct. And basically Unai Emery identified 1v1 matchups that he thought were conducive. So he really wanted Diaby against Webster and Watkins against Dunk, or swapping around. And the way they did that is through bypassing Brighton's man marking system out from the back, going much longer. Zaniolo or McGinn winning the first and second balls, and really attacking the channels. And as soon as they win the ball on transition, when Brighton have lost it, they go forward and use the pace and ruthlessness of the front two. I think Villa made more fouls in the first hour of a game than they have in 2 years. They're really combative. They won second balls. It was basically quite an old school performance, but Diaby and Brighton had no answers for it.
Yeah, Villa are a very good team in transition, very dangerous on the counter-attack, as we saw yesterday. A couple of the goals really came from that. But the thing that interested me quite a lot was that when Brighton were taking goal kicks, Douglas Luiz pushed right up with Zaniolo, Diaby and Watkins. But yeah, I still felt like Villa had a good element of control if that press had been beaten, because it was McGinn had come a little bit more central. There was Kamara still there. And then Pau Torres was pushing up quite high yesterday. In the first half in particular, he literally followed Danny Welbeck deep every single time. And I thought that was a bit strange at the time because obviously Pau Torres, the one thing that we've noticed is if the ball gets played over the top, his recovery pace isn't perhaps as good as Conte's, let's say. But he literally would push right up alongside into midfield and kind of fill the gap where Luiz had pushed right up. I thought that was really interesting. I'm not sure how much that played a part in Villa gaining control and Villa winning the game, but it was very, very aggressive, which isn't perhaps the way that a lot of teams will choose to go up against Brighton and play that way.
No, Emery basically turned the tables, and Diaby, he went man to man. And I think one of the positives about Pau Torres pushing up that far is he can squeeze up. He's good at getting tight, but also if the ball does go in behind, he can give away those little cheeky fouls. And because he's so high, he probably won't get punished. And I've noticed it in the Hibs game. Pau Torres would just leave a little bit on the striker if they were trying to spin him behind. He's quite clever, quite subtle at making those little knocks, little challenges off the ball. And the good thing was that you had Konsa, who's obviously much quicker, was behind him, so he could sweep up anyway. I think what was interesting as well is that Emery adapted midway through that first half, because if you saw Brighton v Man United had real good success early pressing Brighton. What Diaby did was he moved his two centre-backs wider, so basically they had more ground to cover to press the two strikers. Ten Hag on that day couldn't really adapt. Emery did. He got Diaby and took Watkins to lock on to get to. You push Douglas Luiz up, you push Pau Torres up, and all of a sudden you condense the space for Brighton to try and play out from deep. They have to go long as well. And if they're going to go long, you probably fancy Conte over Ferguson or Welbeck. So I thought it was really clever. He thought on his feet fantastically, Unai Emery. And in a game where two highly rated coaches are so good tactically, I think Unai Emery really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and the first goal actually came from quite intricate passing from Villa. McGinn obviously he's playing from the right, but actually if you look at that goal, he actually starts that move very, very central, manages to pick up a kind of a clever position between the lines, then plays a lovely little ball through to Matty Cash, who squares it to Ollie Watkins, who finishes with his left foot. But that was a really well worked goal, and not a nice passing move from Villa. And again, another Emery goal that's kind of a cut back the ball across the goal. So many goals from Villa have been scored like that.
I think I wrote about it or mentioned it in the piece. I think it was the first time really where Villa actually broke the Brighton's press through play out from the back. I think it all started with Conte. He stepped into midfield, didn't he? Played like a lovely through ball into Diaby, and they kept the ball for 10 more passes, and then all of a sudden McGinn turned the switch, got into between the lines, and that lovely through ball to Cash to square it. And I don't know if it's just me noticing it, but when you see those type of goals, Emery seems to celebrate them a lot more. It's like
it's an Emery goal.
He loves it, There's certain goals, a deflection goal or a counter attack towards the end of a game where Emery's celebrating, but there's certain goals like the one against Burnley away where Emery really, really enjoys it. And that was perfect pattern of play, something that it's worked on routinely at Bodymore.
Yeah, and it reminded me a little bit of the start. Well, it started to remind me a little bit of the Newcastle game last season, where that was really a statement performance from Villa last season. And yesterday felt very much like this season's version of that, where we're letting everybody know we're going to be a big part of the Premier League this season. And Watkins, he's already scored last week against Chelsea. We know when he scores in one game, he'll most likely score in the next. And he caused them so many problems kind of coming in from that left-hand side. And again, Villa's press they pressed Brighton, forced them into a mistake. And actually at the time, I felt like Watkins had maybe made the wrong decision and done a little bit too much, held onto the ball for a little bit too long. It was actually a really, really good finish into the near post. And another thing I noticed in that passage of play, and what I noticed this watching it back to today, is that I felt like we were so good that Lewis Dunk, who's usually quite a composed defender for Brighton, he was trying to fill like every gap. He was almost doing too much, Lewis Dunk, but it was because Villa were forcing him to do too much, which led to Brighton being a little bit all over the place, because he was getting himself pulled into positions that he really didn't need to go to. I didn't think for that second goal, I didn't think he needed to come across as far. I think he'd have been better off staying where he was and leaving it to the defenders around him. But he kind of tried to take responsibility, and I actually think that cost Brighton, and it cost him. So it's another goal, perhaps slightly fortunate. Zaniolo didn't get called up offside. I haven't seen it back at a decent angle, to be honest, to know whether he did interfere with Steele, but Steele's got quite close to it. To be fair, it's not like he's completely blindsided by Zaniolo being there, but are we a little bit fortunate with that, do you think?
I think you've probably seen them given offside, haven't you? I think Zaniolo, he's in the way. But what was really impressive in that 12-minute spell where they scored those 3 goals is Brighton are always so economical. They never look like they're out of sync. They never look really ruffled, do they? They just, everything seems like it's going to plan, but yet they look so disturbed by everything, really. Every time Villa got into their final third, even to their half, they were at 6s and 7s. And one of the reasons was because of Diaby and Watkins in that little channel between centre-back and full-back where, you're testing Dunk and Webster, who are fantastic defenders, but 1v1, especially out wide, they haven't got the pace, to compete with these guys.
They don't want to be out wide.
No. And De Zerbi kind of addressed it at half time, didn't he? He put on Tariq Lamptey, who's obviously probably the quickest defender they've got at left back, just to stop the inside runs of Diaby, because obviously he contributed to the third goal, the own goal. They just continue to keep catching Brighton on transition. The 2 fullbacks of Brighton obviously are supposed to be nice and high, keeping the ball, moving it. But Villa were so aggressive; they won the ball back, and it was like the Red Arrows, wasn't it? The front 2, and then obviously the number 10s go centrally. So the movement was fantastic, and they continued to keep catching Brighton on transition, and that's why Lewis Dunk, like you said, struggled.
Yeah, but Villa just looked so dangerous in that first half, and got the third again pretty close to when they got the second. It was an own goal from Estupiñán. Now this was the one that I did think Luiz fouled Solly March, if I'm being honest. But from what I've heard, it was too far back to to call it. But
Interesting.
I think the ref probably let that go just because he wasn't 100% sure. And then it actually progressed too far for them to go back and have a look at it. I think he was hoping that they might go back and maybe check whether that was a foul, but they couldn't do it. But again, Estupinian scoring that own goal, it was shots in, like bodies all over the place. The shots just kept coming. And again, a player who's been a really good player in the Premier League since he's gone to Brighton. He looked massively ruffled by what was going on, and he makes a mistake and puts the ball into his own net. But at this point, Diaby and Watkins were just causing absolute chaos for Brighton.
How many shots? I think it was like a ping pong in their box, wasn't it, at the time? It was like shots, Dunk was throwing his body on the line, Webster was, Veltman as well was coming in. All of a sudden, you look at Brighton's midfield, you think, oh, it's nice and technical, they're going to keep the ball. And they just looked completely lightweight, didn't they? Kamara,
Yeah, they really did.
Kamara was dropping into centre half when they had the ball. Without the ball, he was getting nice and aggressive. Luiz was bullying Billy Gilmore. Everything just looked really, really wild and really aggressive. I think, you saw Matty Cash. He made one slide tackle. He made a huge roar to the crowd. They looked really up for it. And
he had a good day against Matoma, so I was worried about that.
Yeah, I think it was a little start of the second half where I thought Matoma might be getting on top, but Cash battled really, really well back. And one thing I was quite excited before the game was I thought Villa would be tested tactically, and they probably have to go up more levels than they haven't been this season, because although they were sixth at the start of the day, I don't think they really had hit their full stride. But yeah, yesterday just seemed to bring everything out of them and inspire them to be the energetic, combative, and play in front of obviously Villa Park with their perfect home record.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I don't think we've seen the best of Villa until this game. Probably this season we've been good, and I think our start had gone under the radar, possibly because we'd lost 2 games by quite a wide deficit. But we were 2 in a row going into this game, 1-4 from 6. That's a really good start to a Premier League season, especially when you look at some of the starts from the other teams and teams you probably expect to finish ahead of Villa as well. I think the start was massively going under the radar. I mean, we won't be under the radar anymore after taking Brighton apart, because everyone knows how good Brighton are, and they rung the changes at half-time. Brighton, obviously shell-shocked. Diaby was hoping for a reaction, and in fairness, he did get a reaction, and I will say when they got it back to 3-1, I was like, oh, no. I never feel so. Arguably, I feel less safe at 3-0 than I do at 0-0 for some reason. I don't know what it is with being a football fan and being a Villa fan, but at 3-0, I was a little part of me that was thinking, this isn't done. And then they scored, and then I felt like they were on top for a while after they scored that goal. It was a bit of a messy goal, a little bit fortunate for Brighton in some way, but they did come out a different outfit at the start of that second half. But when it got to 3-1, Villa did a good job of stifling them. They sat deep a little bit when they needed to, plugged the gaps, didn't leave much space in behind, were very compact, and then again, just what they wanted to do, hit them on the break, and they were so scared of Watkins. But by this point, I mean, I'm losing track of the goals here. I think McGinn played the ball over the top to him. Then a lovely little clipped pass from John McGinn. I think some of his passing yesterday was really, really good. I didn't think he was having a great half in the first half, but I thought he took some real onus and responsibility in the second, and he puts that lovely pass to Watkins, and that's it makes me laugh. I'm not just saying this because he scored a hat-trick yesterday. There's genuinely so many people out there that think Villa can go and buy a striker that is better than Ollie Watkins. It is not possible. He's such a good striker. He offers you so much. Forget the goals yesterday, just his all-round game, his pressing, his directness. He caused Brighton so many problems. And they were so scared of him. They backed off for that second goal. But this is what he can do. Well, he's right foot. He scores headers. He scores goals with his left foot as well. He can finish with his left as well. I know it's taken a pretty hefty deflection, but he was hitting the target with that shot, and he's got a hat trick, and and suddenly his goal record this season looks excellent.
Yeah, you're right. I remember speaking to John McGinn about 4 weeks ago, and he said, Ollie's not scoring, but I tell you what, he's creating space for us. I know that's quite a cliche thing, but he makes these runs that a lot of people might not see into the channels, coming to defeat, knowing that he might not get the ball, but he might go over the top to Diaby. He's always doing something for the team, and Emery says it all the time. Whenever he's asked about Watkins, he says, okay, goals are great, he wants to score, but even if he didn't score for 3 or 4 games, he wouldn't mind Emery in the slightest, because he knows what he contributes. And you think let's say they wanted to buy another striker, 70 million, How long will that take for them to become accustomed to Emery's methods and manage to perform the wide-ranging remit that Watkins does, in terms of his pressing, in terms of coming deep, spinning in behind, everything. It'll be so difficult. And, I've never really had a concern about Watkins. I think maybe
No, me either.
you could give Duran, a few more minutes every now and then, maybe half an hour in games, maybe partner him with Watkins. But Watkins is the main guy. He always will be the main guy. And I think I think the relationship also he's formed with Diaby so quickly into the season, I think it's only going to go from strength to strength.
Do you think, obviously, Southgate was in the crowd watching the game? I saw someone joke yesterday. Southgate was in the crowd, so fully expecting to see Danny Welbeck in the next England squad. Do you think that game will have made Southgate sit up and take notice? I suppose, really, he can't fail to. There's not much more he can do, is there?
No, he said that afterwards as well. Because he said, "What more can I do? It's up to Gareth Southgate." But also, I keep pushing it. But Ezra Konsa as well had another really good game. Played every single minute. Only Villa player too. If he's not in the squad either, you've got to start questioning that as well. I think I like to think that Gareth Southgate was at Villa Park to watch Villa's players, not Danny Welbeck. So it'll be interesting. But you look at Watkins, you think he's probably the best alternative to Harry Kane right now.
Yeah, I think I like Ivan Toney. Obviously, he can't play.
Yeah.
I really like Ivan Toney. I think he offers you a lot of the similar stuff to what Kane offers in terms of his link-up play. So I think it's quite close between him and Watkins. I would say the fact that Nketiah was called up over him for the last squad, no good. Not. I'm quite a big Southgate fan for my sins. I'll probably get panned for that. But I actually really like Gareth Southgate, but I disagree with that decision completely. Not just because I'm a Villa fan, because I just think Ollie Watkins has done it over a longer period in the Premier League, and no English player has more goal contributions in the Premier League that's currently playing in the Premier League over the last 3 years. Now Harry Kane's gone, so there's much more he can do. Really, is there?
No, there isn't. You look at Callum Wilson, who's obviously an alternative, but
Wilson's good.
But his injury record as well. He struggles to train, doesn't he? He has to be managed correctly. He doesn't always start games. He's obviously a really good finisher, but I don't know if he's got the overall package of Watkins. And what surprised me, I thought Watkins would be the type of player that Southgate likes. A guy that runs a lot, good attitude, links with a rotational front three as well, can play off the sides. So it's interesting that he's not on the squad. Obviously, you're more of a Gareth Southgate fan than I am. I used to think he was quite good. I think he's become a little bit too top 6, top 7 centric in recent times. But yeah, hopefully I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And I like to think that in the international break coming up, that Watkins and I really hope Konsa as well get included.
Yeah, there's an international break. It's a couple of weeks away now, 14th of October weekend. I think
straight after Wolves.
So it's a good time to have that hat trick in front of Gareth Southgate, and another good time for Konsa to have a good performance. And then Villa get the 5th. Jacob Ramsay had come on for Zaniolo, but I don't think he's playing his best football, Zaniolo. But there's something about him that I really, really like. And I noticed yesterday for the first time, he's deceptively quick. There was a break at one point where he was keeping up with Diaby and Watkins, and that surprised me. He's actually got a bit of pace about him. He's kind of almost trying too hard, I think, Zaniolo at the moment. He just needs a goal or an assist or something, and once he gets that, he's really gonna take off. But Ramsey's back now, and Ramsey's a critical player for Villa, and he scores that goal, just shows what he's all about. Really, that's what I'd describe as a typical Ramsey goal, cutting in and curling one in the corner.
I think Zaniolo is just like this thoroughbred racehorse. I think he just needs to get into it. The way he runs as well is, he's got these long strides. He's a big guy. He's always trying to do something on the ball, isn't he? Sometimes he loses it, but he's always trying to take risks. And one thing that I found quite interesting last week at Stamford Bridge is that Emery decided to stick with him or to start him from the off. And I thought he might have gone for a bit of a more of a defensively sound option, but it shows that he trusts Zaniolo in that role. He knows what his duties, he knows what to do in and out of possession. And I do think he's a really good option to have. Maybe you don't always start him, Jacob Ramsey's coming back, but I do think he's got that game-changing capabilities in him. Jacob Ramsey, I spent too much time watching a lot of his games back from last season, and I just think his intelligence, in his positional understanding and spatial awareness, I think is exceptional. I think the small details in what he does. Getting into that half pocket, the goal he scored yesterday. Technically, he's outstanding, and I do think there's so many more levels to get to, and it's going to be so exciting if he can get into full fitness under Emery, work with the likes of Diaby up top. I think sky's the limit for him, and with Zaniolo pushing him, I think it's unbelievable options to have in those number 10 positions.
Yeah, he's very diligent defensively as well, Ramsay.
Yeah.
People talk about McGinn's defensive side playing in that position, but actually Ramsay's equally as good, in my opinion. He does some really intelligent defending, and he's good at following instructions. I think if a manager tells him to do something, he's very good at replicating that on the pitch. Jacob Ramsay for someone so long. So the fact that Villa have had this start to the season, without Ramsay, who is one of their key players, I would have said he's one of Villa's most important players. That makes the start even more impressive. Obviously, no Moreno, no Mings, no Buendia. So Villa have had this start without some really good players, and they finished it off with the sixth. Watkins perhaps should have scored, but when it's your day, it's your day. Even when he doesn't score, it falls back to Douglas Luiz, and he rolls it into the back of the net, and Watkins still gets an assist in fantasy football as well. I had an excellent day in fantasy football yesterday because I had Watkins, Diaby, and Cash, so that was brilliant as well.
I learnt my lesson because I put Watkins on my bench last week at Chelsea, and I thought, I'll never doubt Ollie Watkins again. He came straight back into my team, and bagged a nice, handy 23 points, didn't he?
Really
but
did.
Yeah, what is it, Douglas Luiz? What is it? 5 home games now he's scored in?
Something like that in a row. He's scoring a lot of goals. I know he's took penalties and set pieces, but he rolled one. He was forward and rolled one into the net for that sixth yesterday. He is almost, don't talk about him because he's just accepted now that he's just so good. But you look at some of the midfielders teams have got in the Premier League. Douglas Luiz is right up there in my opinion now.
He's a throwback, isn't he? Because we're very quick to say what type of midfielder is a player. Is he a number 6, a number 8, a number 10? Luiz does it all, doesn't he? He can get into that double pivot. He can receive off the centre back. He can break the lines going forward as well. You saw it last week at Chelsea. Some of the things he was doing, twisting and turning in the pockets and tight pressure, requires so much technical ability and so much composure as well. And I watched Emery at Stamford Bridge very close. I was only about 4 rows ahead of him, and he was shouting at Douglas Luiz all the time. I felt quite sorry for Luiz. Like, he was telling him to cover so much ground. He was telling him obviously to get the ball, to be calm, to link the play. What he's got to do in that Villa team is just so important, and yet he does it every week. And you're right. If it's Villa, unless it's Villa fans, he doesn't really get the plaudits he deserves to be looked at as one of the top centre midfielders in the Premier League. But I think that's good. He goes under the radar. Obviously, opposition clubs know him and Kamara. I know Liverpool, like the two, but having those two in midfield, so young, so dynamic, fit. Mostly fit, can play week in, week out without really any changeability. I think it's fantastic, and they are the engine room, aren't they?
Yeah, Villa have just got so many good players. I don't remember many times in my life where I've sat here. Well, obviously, I started doing this when Villa were in the Championship, so at the time I wasn't sat here thinking Villa had loads of good players. But in my lifetime, I can't remember. And I've had a season ticket for 30 years now, so I've watched a lot of football at Villa Park. This team's just so good. As a team, they're very good, but they've just got some really, really talented individuals as well. I was thinking about this yesterday with Diaby. It's weird to say that someone who cost around £50 million was a bargain. But actually, when I think of those type of players in the Premier League, and some of the players that Manchester United and Chelsea have brought into play those kind of positions and spent more on than Diaby, Villa have picked someone out there who's just adapted to the Premier League straight away. Anthony for Man U's cost not far off double. I know I'd rather have him in my team.
Yeah, I've got a piece coming out hopefully this week on Moussa Diaby and basically how Emery's repackaged him. I think one of the reasons why a lot of the top 6 clubs weren't quite sure about Moussa Diaby is because they saw him as a similar player to Nicolas Pepe, to an Ante, in terms of a right winger, quite left-footed, quite predictable. But yeah, all of a sudden he comes into Emery's system at Villa, bang, straight into pre-season, plays as this hybrid number 10 striker with Watkins, gets into much more threatening positions, uses his ball carrying skills, and all of a sudden he goes from this predictable winger to being this really incisive centre forward who can get you a lot of goals. So straight away, within the first couple of weeks, his market value's gone up exponentially. I think what he's done in the last couple of weeks in terms of Emery adapting some aspects of Villa to help Diaby in terms of sometimes going a bit longer, using his pace. I think it's really, really clever. And if this is Diaby now settling in, then it bodes very, very well for the next couple of months.
Yeah, let's just look ahead to Villa's next 5 games. I did say before this run of games that it was I felt like it was going to be a decent run of fixtures for Villa. I'm not sure Jacob just disappeared. Actually, I'm not sure what's happened. It could be me on my own to end the show. Are we still there? Right, I can't see. I can't see Jacobs. That's good. So yeah, Villa's next 5 fixtures. Obviously, Europe on Thursday, Wolves on Sunday, West Ham after the international break, and then AZ, Alkmaar, and Luton to finish Villa's next 5. So again, I'm looking at them games and thinking there's a decent chance of some points here. I think Villa have got a great run of fixtures. It'd be interesting to see what kind of side gets put out on Thursday in Europe, and then travelling to a ground on Sunday where Villa don't stereotypically do brilliantly. And of course, they've won the game at the weekend, a big win from them against Manchester City. So they'll have their tails up now. Wolves, so it'll be a tough exercise, but be interesting to see what Villa turns up, because there is a good chance of points here.
There is. I think first of all they need to make sure that they get their midweek hoodoo sorted out.
Yes, that does need sorting.
It's like the drop off between weekends and weekday football has been quite stark in the last couple of weeks. So they need to make sure they go quite strong. They need to start well. Hopefully they can then ease off in the second half on Thursday, and then they can look forward, get the job done, then look forward to obviously Molineux. I think Molineux, it's a place where I think it's difficult for certain sides. I know Man United have had quite a bad record there. I think so I know Southampton have for a fact. Bournemouth have as well. Obviously Villa had a pretty poor day out last season as well. I think it's one of those games where Emery needs to make sure that he starts on the front foot. And Gary O'Neill, who is capable of beating the top 6 or beating the better players, because he sits quite deep and then takes advantage on the counter, that Villa are aware of that, and their high line make sure it's sorted out. And yeah, there's no trouble next week.
Yeah, a few people in the chat saying like Wolves, West Ham, they're teams that Villa haven't had a great record against over the last few years. But I guess Wolves did do us a favour on Saturday by beating Manchester City. That's good for Villa's title charge, isn't it, Jacob?
Oh, 100%. I think I was delighted there with Wolves. I think it's a massive step for Villa winning the title, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to really, 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 really help us right up there. We did have a league table to show, but something's happened to it. It's corrupted, so it's not going to come up anymore. I can't actually remember where we are in the league, if anyone wants to tell me. But I know we were 3rd after our game, but I think we may have moved on to 5th or 6th now. Jacob, do you know where we are in the league?
I think it's 5th now, yeah. Dropped out of the Champions League places. Or
might not be. 5th could still be.
No, it might not be, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's not doing too well for our title hopes, is it?
No, it was a shame to drop down, but just an amazing start to the season, an amazing game yesterday as well. That Newcastle game from last season, I do always look at that as being one of my favourite games. I think because I've been hanging, I've not quite worked out whether this Brighton game was better than that Newcastle game yesterday. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one ranks on top.
When you were drinking those sambucas yesterday, what were your thoughts? Were you thinking it was good at that point, or was it kind of?
I definitely didn't think the sambuca was good, and I didn't think it was good today either. I don't know. There was something about that Newcastle game that I felt very, very special, because I think maybe that was the first time that I felt like, right, there's something sustainable being built here. We are a really, really good team. Unai Emery is the real deal. So I've kind of carried on that feeling of him and the team ever since. But 6-1 against Brighton, a team that everyone raves about, it has to be up there, doesn't it? David Stiles is saying Newcastle just shades it. For him, it's really, really tight. It seems weird to not be talking about 6-1 as being the best performance under Emery, but there was just something really, really special about that Newcastle game, I think.
I wasn't in the ground for the Newcastle game, so I couldn't get a sense of what Villa Park was like that day. But if you're looking at it now, you look at Brighton, you think, after Man City, they're probably the most tactically astute, the most assured side, aren't they? One of them in Europe. Everyone loves the way they play, how they set up. And for Villa to do what they did and put in a performance like that after having a good start to the season but being nowhere near their best and making it click all of a sudden and dominating, tactically Emery dominated De Zerbi, all the players winning their duels, I think it was a huge statement. And if you're looking at, the other top 4, top 5 hopefuls, your Tottenham's, Liverpool's, even Chelsea, if they get their acts together, you look at that and think, Villa are serious here, and they're getting better and better. You've got players coming back from injury. You've got Emery, settling some players into the squad still. It's a huge statement. And Emery always said, as in the last couple of defeats, that he's been trying certain things, trialing a few things. But this was the third game that they've been unchanged in. Obviously, Jacob Ramsay might come in now, but it just feels like something's building and they're really gathering momentum. And they're starting from a point where they're fifth. So, the upward trajectory is really promising.
It feels like the kind of win that will really give the players an awful lot of confidence to kick on. Now you have 3 Premier League wins in a row and 10 home wins in a row in the Premier League. That is not easily done. Not many teams will be able to achieve a run like that. So again, Unai Emery, he is just a joke how good he is.
Only 9 teams have done it in 30 years.
Is that all it is?
Yeah, 9 teams, and obviously Man City obviously just do it every single week. Really, it seems like. But what Emery's created there at Villa Park and it is remarkable. And you think if they can just improve their away form just a fraction, then you think the promise of where they could finish is remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, the games are coming thick and fast at the moment. You're right about the hoodoo of midweek. They do need to sort that out. I used to think Villa Park under the lights, absolutely great. Now I think, oh no, Villa Park.
On a lunchtime kickoff.
Don't turn the floodlights on. Let's do some daytime games. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens on Thursday. But that does us for our chat around Aston Villa 6, Brighton 1. Thanks ever so much to Jacob for carrying me through this evening and joining me on the show, and thanks to Lee for producing as well. Thanks to everyone that's watched live and those that will go on and watch as well. If you're listening, well, wherever you're listening or watching, if you could please give us a like. We hit the 300 likes target that I set last time. Because we've won 6-1, I'm going to set a big likes target of 601. That would be what I'd want. 601 would be the likes that I would like. So if you're watching this video, and there will be, I'd like to think there'll be at least 600 of you who do watch this on YouTube. So give the video a like, please. Subscribe to the channel with your post notifications on. The channel will be back with something ahead of the Thursday Europe game. And I think Greg and myself, I don't think his partner has given birth yet, but I need to find out. I could do dropping him a text, but Greg and myself will come on and do a show in the week as well. Thanks ever so much for watching and listening. Up the Villa.